Close your eyes and imagine standing in the Roman Forum on a warm afternoon in 100 CE. The sounds of merchants calling out their wares, the footsteps of senators in their togas hurrying to the Senate, the distant cheers from the Colosseum echo through marble streets. You are in the heart of the greatest empire the ancient world has ever known. An empire that stretched from the misty hills of Britain to the scorching deserts of Egypt, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Euphrates River. Tonight, we journey through the rise and fall of ancient Rome, a civilization that gave us laws, languages, architecture, and ideas that still shape our world today. This is the story of Rome, the eternal city. Fact 1. Ancient Rome lasted for over 1,000 years, one of the longest-lasting civilizations in human history. According to legend, Rome was founded in 753 BCE by Romulus, who became its first king after killing his twin brother Remus in a dispute. The city grew from a small settlement on the Tiber River into a republic, then an empire that dominated the Mediterranean world and beyond. Rome finally fell in 476 CE when the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustus, was deposed by Germanic tribes. However, the Eastern Roman Empire, known as the Byzantine Empire, continued for another 1,000 years until 1453 CE. From its legendary founding to its eventual fall, Rome's influence shaped Western civilization in ways that still resonate today. Fact 2. The Roman Empire at its peak in 117 CE under Emperor Trajan controlled approximately 5 million square kilometers of territory. This massive empire stretched 2,500 miles from east to west and 2,300 miles from north to south. It encompassed the entire Mediterranean Sea, which the Romans called Mare Nostrum, meaning our sea. The empire included all or part of modern-day England, France, Spain, Portugal, Italy, Greece, Turkey, Syria, Egypt, Tunisia, Algeria, and dozens of other nations. At its height, Rome ruled over 70 million people, roughly 21% of the world's population at that time. Managing this vast territory required an unprecedented system of roads, aqueducts, military outposts, and administrative centers. Fact 3. The Romans built over 250,000 miles of roads throughout their empire, a network so extensive and well-constructed that many Roman roads are still in use today, over 2,000 years later. These roads were engineering marvels, built in layers with drainage systems that kept them dry and stable. The famous saying, "All roads lead to Rome," was literally true, as the Romans designed their road system to radiate from the capital city to every corner of the empire. These roads served multiple purposes, moving armies quickly to defend borders, facilitating trade and commerce, enabling efficient communication, and spreading Roman culture. Roman roads were so well built that medieval and even modern roads often followed the same paths. Fact 4. The Colosseum, Rome's iconic amphitheater, could hold between 50,000 and 80,000 spectators and featured 80 entrance gates that could empty the entire building in just 15 minutes. This architectural marvel was completed in 80 CE and stood 157 feet tall with 4 stories. The arena floor was made of wood covered with sand and could be flooded for naval battle reenactments called naumachii. Beneath the floor was a complex network of tunnels and chambers called the hypogeum, where gladiators and animals waited before being lifted to the arena floor through trapdoors. The Colosseum had a retractable awning system called the velarium that protected spectators from sun and rain, operated by sailors from the Roman Navy. Fact 5. Roman gladiators were not always slaves or criminals, and many were volunteers who fought for fame and fortune. Successful gladiators could become celebrities, with fan clubs, endorsement deals, and admirers throughout the empire. Some gladiators earned enough money to buy their freedom and retire wealthy. Gladiatorial combat was highly regulated with referees, doctors standing by, and specific rules for different types of matches. While gladiatorial games were certainly brutal, not every match ended in death. Some historians estimate that only about 10% of matches resulted in a gladiator's death, as gladiators were expensive to train and maintain. The most successful gladiators had long careers spanning many years. Fact 6. Ancient Rome had a sophisticated plumbing system that brought fresh water into the city through massive stone aqueducts. Rome had 11 major aqueducts that supplied the city with approximately 300 gallons of water per person per day, more than most modern cities provide. The water powered public fountains, baths, toilets, and even private homes of the wealthy. The aqueducts used gravity to move water over distances of up to 60 miles, with some sections built on tall arches that still stand today. Roman engineers calculated the perfect gradual slope to keep water flowing steadily without being too fast or too slow. The largest aqueduct, the Aqua Marcia, delivered water from 57 miles away. Fact 7. The ancient Romans invented concrete, a revolutionary building material that allowed them to construct buildings and structures impossible with stone alone. Roman concrete, called opus caementitium, was made from volcanic ash, lime, and seawater, creating a material that actually grew stronger over time, especially when exposed to seawater. This explains why many Roman structures have survived for 2 millennia while modern concrete often begins deteriorating after just 50 years. The Pantheon's massive unreinforced concrete dome, completed in 128 CE, remains the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome nearly 2,000 years later, a testament to Roman engineering genius. Fact 8. Ancient Romans had a highly advanced public bath system called thermae that served as social centers for all classes of Roman society. These massive complexes included not just baths but also libraries, gardens, exercise areas, shops, and restaurants. The baths of Caracalla, completed in 216 CE, could accommodate 1,600 bathers at once and featured hot rooms, warm rooms, cold rooms, swimming pools, saunas, and massage areas. Romans bathed communally regardless of social class, though men and women bathed separately or at different times. Bathing was a daily social ritual that could last several hours, combining hygiene, exercise, business networking, and socializing. Fact 9. The Roman Forum was the center of Roman political, religious, and commercial life for over 1,000 years. This rectangular plaza was surrounded by the ruins of ancient government buildings, temples, and monuments. Here, Julius Caesar was cremated, senators debated the fate of the empire, and criminals were executed. The Forum was where Romans gathered to hear news, conduct business, worship gods, and participate in civic life. Over the centuries, multiple forums were built as Rome grew, but the original Roman Forum remained the symbolic heart of the empire. Walking through the Forum today, visitors can still see the columns, arches, and temples that witnessed the rise and fall of Rome. Fact 10. Ancient Rome was the first city in history to reach a population of 1 million people, an achievement not matched again until London in the 19th century. At its peak around 100 CE, Rome's population may have exceeded 1.5 million. This massive urban population required an unprecedented infrastructure of water supply, food distribution, waste management, and public services. Rome imported grain from Egypt and North Africa by the shipload to feed its people. The city received free grain distributions called the annona, provided by the government to prevent famine and social unrest. The phrase bread and circuses refers to the Roman government's strategy of keeping the population happy with free food and entertainment. Fact 11. Latin, the language of ancient Rome, became the foundation for the Romance languages spoken by nearly 1 billion people today. Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanian all evolved directly from Latin. Even English, a Germanic language, derives approximately 60% of its vocabulary from Latin, either directly or through French. Latin remained the language of science, medicine, law, and the Catholic Church for centuries after Rome fell. Legal terms, medical terminology, and scientific names still use Latin. Learning Latin reveals the roots of thousands of English words, making it easier to understand and learn new vocabulary. Fact 12. The Roman military was one of history's most disciplined and effective fighting forces, organized into legions of approximately 5,000 soldiers each. Roman soldiers called legionaries were professional, career soldiers who served for 25 years. They received regular pay, training, and benefits including land grants upon retirement. Roman military training was notoriously harsh and demanding. Soldiers marched 20 miles in 5 hours while carrying 60 pounds of equipment. They trained with weapons heavier than those used in actual combat so that real weapons would feel lighter in battle. Roman military discipline was absolute, with severe punishments for cowardice or insubordination, including decimation, where every 10th man in a cowardly unit was killed by his fellow soldiers. Fact 13. Julius Caesar was not an emperor but a general and politician who never wore a crown. He was assassinated on the Ides of March 1544 BCE, by a group of senators who feared he would make himself king. Caesar was stabbed 23 times on the steps of the theater of Pompey. His famous last words, "Et tu, Brute," meaning, "and you, Brutus," may be Shakespeare's invention rather than historical fact. Caesar's assassination plunged Rome into civil war. His great-nephew and adopted son, Octavian, later known as Augustus, emerged victorious and became Rome's first emperor. Caesar's name became synonymous with emperor, giving us the words Kaiser in German and Tsar in Russian. Fact 14. Augustus, Rome's first emperor, ruled for 41 years from 27 BCE to 14 CE, establishing the Pax Romana, or Roman peace, that lasted over 200 years. During his reign, Augustus transformed Rome from a city of brick into a city of marble. He reorganized the government, created the Praetorian Guard as his personal bodyguard, established a professional fire brigade, and built numerous temples and public buildings. He claimed to have found Rome a city of brick and left it a city of marble. Augustus was a shrewd politician who maintained the appearance of republican government while consolidating absolute power. His reign marked the transition from Roman Republic to Roman Empire. Fact 15. Ancient Romans worshipped hundreds of gods and goddesses adopted from Greek, Egyptian, and other cultures. Jupiter, the king of gods, was equivalent to Greek Zeus. Mars, the god of war, was particularly important in militaristic Rome. Romans believed gods directly influenced daily life and required constant worship, prayers, and sacrifices to maintain their favor. Roman religion was practical and contractual, diuti, meaning I give so that you might give. Romans made offerings to gods expecting specific benefits in return. Religion and government were intertwined, with emperors often declared divine after death. The Romans were generally tolerant of other religions as long as people also honored Roman gods and the emperor. Fact 16. Christianity began as a small Jewish sect in a remote province of the Roman Empire but eventually became Rome's official religion. Christians were initially persecuted because they refused to worship Roman gods or the emperor, seen as treason against the state. Persecution varied by emperor and region, from sporadic local actions to empire-wide campaigns. The Colosseum tradition holds that many Christians were martyred there, though historical evidence is limited. Everything changed in 313 CE when Emperor Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, granting religious tolerance to Christians. Constantine himself converted to Christianity, though he wasn't baptized until his deathbed. By 380 CE, Christianity became the official state religion under Emperor Theodosius, completing one of history's most dramatic religious transformations. Fact 17. The Roman Senate, established in the earliest days of Rome, was a political institution that advised kings, guided the republic, and continued under the empire for over 1,000 years. Senators wore togas with a distinctive purple stripe indicating their rank. During the Republic, the Senate held significant power over foreign policy, finance, and legislation. Senators were typically wealthy landowners from Rome's oldest families. Under the empire, the Senate's power diminished as emperors consolidated authority, but it remained prestigious and influential. The word Senate comes from the Latin senex, meaning old man, reflecting the institution's association with wisdom and experience. Modern democratic senates around the world, including the United States Senate, trace their inspiration to Rome. Fact 18. Ancient Romans held elaborate public festivals throughout the year, with over 130 days dedicated to holidays and games. These festivals combined religious observances with public entertainment including chariot races, gladiatorial games, theatrical performances, and public feasts. The Saturnalia, held in December, was a week-long festival of role reversal where slaves were temporarily freed, given the right to speak freely to their masters, and served meals by their owners. Gift-giving and feasting characterized Saturnalia, and many scholars see it as an influence on modern Christmas traditions. Romans loved spectacle and entertainment, and these frequent festivals kept the population happy while reinforcing social bonds and religious traditions. Fact 19. Roman cuisine was more sophisticated and varied than commonly believed. Wealthy Romans enjoyed elaborate multi-course dinners called ceni that could last for hours. They ate lying on couches arranged around a central table. Romans consumed bread, olives, cheese, fruits, vegetables, fish, and meat. They loved garum, a fermented fish sauce that was expensive and prized throughout the empire, similar to how soy sauce is used in Asian cuisine today. Romans didn't have tomatoes, potatoes, or corn, which came from the Americas. They sweetened food with honey since sugar was unknown. Wine mixed with water was the standard drink for all classes. The wealthy displayed their status through exotic foods like flamingo tongues, dormice, and ostrich. Fact 20. Roman women had more rights and freedoms than women in many other ancient civilizations, though still restricted compared to men. Women could own property, conduct business, and inherit wealth. Upper-class women received education and could be influential in political matters through their husbands and sons. Some women became successful business owners, particularly in trades like textiles. Roman mothers held authority within households and were respected for their role raising future citizens. However, women couldn't vote or hold political office, and they required male guardians for most legal transactions. Despite limitations, Roman women had significantly more autonomy than women in ancient Greece. Fact 21. Pompeii and Herculaneum, two prosperous Roman cities, were buried by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE, preserving them in volcanic ash for nearly 2,000 years. Approximately 16,000 people lived in Pompeii when Vesuvius erupted, and an estimated 2,000 died in the disaster. The eruption buried the cities under 20 feet of ash and pumice, creating a time capsule of Roman life. When excavations began in the 18th century, archaeologists discovered remarkably preserved buildings, frescoes, mosaics, household items, and even food. The bodies of victims were perfectly preserved as hollow spaces in the ash. By filling these spaces with plaster, archaeologists created haunting casts showing people's final moments. Pompeii provides our most detailed view of daily life in the Roman Empire. Fact 22. Roman engineering included sophisticated heating systems called hypocausts, an early form of central heating. Hot air from a furnace circulated through spaces under floors and inside walls, warming rooms from below. This system was used in wealthy homes and especially in public baths. Slaves tended the furnaces day and night to maintain comfortable temperatures. The hypocaust was remarkably efficient and comfortable, providing even heat distribution. Some systems included adjustable vents to control temperature. This Roman technology was so advanced that similar radiant floor heating systems weren't widely used again until the 20th century. Fact 23. The Pantheon in Rome, completed around 128 CE, features a massive dome with an opening called an oculus at its center. The dome spans 142 feet and was the world's largest dome for over 1,300 years. The building remains in near-perfect condition almost 2,000 years later. The oculus, 27 feet wide, is the only light source and creates dramatic lighting effects as the sun moves across the sky. When it rains, water enters through the oculus but drains through nearly invisible holes in the sloped floor. The Pantheon has been in continuous use since it was built, first as a Roman temple to all gods, then as a Christian church since 609 CE. Raphael and other notable Italians are buried there. Fact 24. Romans practiced adoption extensively, especially among the upper classes. Adoption was often political, allowing ambitious men to become heirs to powerful families. Julius Caesar adopted his great-nephew Octavian, who became Emperor Augustus. Emperor Trajan was adopted by Emperor Nerva. The practice of adoption created some of Rome's most capable emperors, as men were chosen for merit rather than birth. Romans distinguished between biological children and adopted children less than many modern cultures do. Adoption carried legal rights and inheritance, and adopted children took their new family's name. This practice helped maintain family lines and political dynasties. Fact 25. The Appian Way, built beginning in 312 BCE, was Rome's most famous road and called the Regina Viarum, the Queen of Roads. This strategic military highway connected Rome to southern Italy, eventually extending 350 miles to the port of Brundisium. The road was paved with perfectly fitted polygonal stones so precisely placed that a knife blade couldn't fit between them. Much of the original Roman road still exists and can be walked or cycled today. The Appian Way was lined with tombs and monuments, as Roman law prohibited burial within city walls. Parts of the ancient road still show grooves worn by countless chariot wheels over centuries. Fact 26. Romans crucified tens of thousands of people over the centuries as punishment for crimes ranging from piracy to rebellion. Crucifixion was a deliberately slow, painful, and public form of execution designed to deter others from similar crimes. Victims typically died from asphyxiation as their bodies sagged, making breathing progressively more difficult over hours or days. After the slave rebellion led by Spartacus was defeated in 71 BCE, the Romans crucified 6,000 captured slaves along the Appian Way from Rome to Capua, a distance of 120 miles. The bodies were left on crosses for months as a warning. The most famous crucifixion victim was Jesus of Nazareth, executed as a political insurrectionist around 30 CE. Fact 27. Roman toilets were communal, with rows of seats arranged over channels of flowing water. There were no partitions or privacy, and Romans chatted while using them. A sponge on a stick called a tersorium, shared by all users and rinsed in the water channel, served as toilet paper. While this seems unhygienic, the constantly flowing water kept the system relatively clean. Public toilets were social gathering places. Wealthy homes had private latrines, but most Romans used public facilities. Despite sophisticated sanitation, Romans had no understanding of germ theory, and disease spread easily. The communal sponge likely transmitted infections from person to person. Fact 28. Romans loved chariot racing even more than gladiatorial games. The Circus Maximus in Rome could hold over 150,000 spectators, making it the largest sports venue ever built in ancient times. Chariot races featured teams called factions, identified by colors: red, white, blue, and green. Fans were fanatically loyal to their faction, similar to modern sports fans. Riots occasionally broke out between rival factions. Charioteers were mostly slaves or lower-class freedmen, but successful racers could become wealthy and famous. Some charioteers became so popular that fans rioted when they retired. Races were dangerous, with frequent crashes called naufragia, or shipwrecks, that could kill drivers and horses. Fact 29. Roman law forms the foundation of legal systems in most of Europe, Latin America, and many other parts of the world. Roman law established principles still used today: innocent until proven guilty, the burden of proof lies with the accuser, and judges should interpret laws based on evidence and precedent. The concept of natural rights, contracts, property law, and much of modern civil law derives from Roman legal traditions. Roman law was codified and systematized over centuries, culminating in the Corpus Juris Civilis, or body of civil law, compiled under Byzantine Emperor Justinian in 529 to 534 CE. This massive legal code influenced legal systems worldwide and is still studied in law schools today. Fact 30. The Roman numeral system is still used today for dates, book chapters, clock faces, and movie credits. Roman numerals used combinations of letters to represent numbers: I for 1, V for 5, X for 10, L for 50, C for 100, D for 500, and M for 1000. Romans had no symbol for zero, which limited mathematical calculations. Despite this limitation, Roman numerals served the empire well for accounting, trade, and record-keeping. The system's persistence for over 2 millennia shows its utility for certain purposes, even though Arabic numerals are far more efficient for complex calculations. The year 2024 in Roman numerals is Mexiv. Fact 31. Roman Emperor Nero is often portrayed as a mad tyrant who fiddled while Rome burned in 64 CE, but this story is likely false. Violins weren't invented until the 16th century. Nero was in Antium, 35 miles from Rome, when the fire started, and he rushed back to coordinate relief efforts. However, Nero was unpopular among the Senate and wealthy classes, and historians from this class wrote most surviving accounts of his reign, often exaggerating or inventing his cruelties. Nero did blame Christians for the fire and persecuted them brutally. He also seized land cleared by the fire to build his extravagant golden house. While Nero was certainly excessive and possibly unstable, some accusations against him were likely propaganda by his enemies. Fact 32. The Roman province of Britannia, corresponding roughly to modern England and Wales, was occupied by Rome from 43 CE to around 410 CE. Emperor Claudius led the invasion with 4 legions totaling about 40,000 soldiers. The Romans built fortifications across Britain including Hadrian's Wall, a massive stone barrier 73 miles long built to mark the northern frontier and keep out the Picts and other tribes from Scotland. The wall stood up to 20 feet high and was manned by approximately 9,000 soldiers. Romans introduced roads, cities, heated baths, and Mediterranean culture to Britain. When Rome abandoned Britain in 410 CE, much Roman infrastructure fell into ruin, and Britain entered the Dark Ages. Fact 33. Roman gladiators followed specialized combat styles, each with specific weapons and armor. The Murmillo wore a helmet with a fish crest and carried a large rectangular shield and short sword. The Retiarius fought with a net and trident, wearing minimal armor for mobility. The Secutor chased the Retiarius with sword and shield. The Thraex carried a curved sword and small shield. These different styles created varied and interesting matches. Gladiators trained in special schools called ludi, where they lived, ate, and trained together. The training was intense and dangerous, but gladiators received excellent medical care, as they were valuable investments for their owners. Fact 34. Roman slaves made up perhaps 30 to 40% of the population in Italy at the empire's peak, numbering several million people. Slavery was fundamental to the Roman economy and social structure. People became slaves through birth to slave parents, capture in war, piracy, or debt. Slaves worked in households, on farms, in mines, as gladiators, and in every aspect of Roman life. Treatment varied widely. Some slaves, especially educated Greeks who served as tutors and physicians, lived comfortably and could earn money to buy their freedom. Others, particularly those in mines or on agricultural estates, endured brutal conditions and short lifespans. Freed slaves called freedmen could become Roman citizens and even wealthy, though social stigma remained. Fact 35. The Praetorian Guard was an elite unit that served as the emperor's personal bodyguards, with approximately 9,000 to 10,000 soldiers stationed in Rome. They received better pay, shorter service terms, and greater prestige than regular legionaries. However, the Praetorians became kingmakers, sometimes assassinating emperors who displeased them and auctioning the imperial throne to the highest bidder. In 193 CE, after assassinating Emperor Pertinax, the Praetorians literally auctioned the empire to Didius Julianus, who reigned just 66 days before being killed. Emperor Constantine finally disbanded the Praetorian Guard in 312 CE after they supported his rival in a civil war. Their barracks in Rome remained visible ruins for centuries. Fact 36. Roman medicine was surprisingly advanced, with physicians performing cataract surgery, setting broken bones, and even conducting caesarean sections, though the mother rarely survived. Roman doctors understood the importance of hygiene, clean water, and sanitation in preventing disease, though they didn't understand germ theory. They used various surgical instruments including scalpels, forceps, and bone drills, remarkably similar to modern versions. Romans developed field hospitals for wounded soldiers, establishing the first organized military medicine. They used anesthetics including opium and alcohol to reduce pain during surgery. The most famous Roman physician, Galen, who lived in the 2nd century CE, wrote medical texts that remained authoritative for over 1,300 years. Fact 37. Mount Vesuvius wasn't the only volcanic eruption to affect Rome. In 536 CE, a massive volcanic eruption, possibly in Iceland, threw so much ash into the atmosphere that it caused global cooling and dimmed the sun for 18 months. This catastrophic event, along with subsequent eruptions, contributed to crop failures, famine, and the plague of Justinian that killed millions. Some historians argue these environmental disasters hastened the fall of the Western Roman Empire and contributed to the Dark Ages. Tree ring data and ice core samples confirm this period of extreme climate disruption. The combination of natural disasters, plague, and political instability created a perfect storm of crises. Fact 38. Roman brides wore yellow veils called flammeum on their wedding day, and yellow became associated with marriage in Rome. Weddings were elaborate social events involving religious ceremonies, processions, feasts, and specific rituals. The bride was carried over the threshold of her new home because it was considered bad luck for her to trip while entering. This tradition continues in many cultures today. Roman marriage contracts were legal agreements outlining property rights and divorce terms. Divorce was relatively common and could be initiated by either spouse. After divorce, women retained their own property and dowry, giving them some financial independence unusual in the ancient world. Fact 39. The Roman postal system called the cursus publicus was an extensive network of roads, stations, and messengers that carried official government communications across the empire. Relay stations were positioned every 10 to 15 miles where messengers could change horses, rest, and exchange messages with the next courier. Important messages could travel up to 50 miles per day. This system enabled rapid communication across the vast empire, allowing emperors in Rome to receive reports from distant provinces in days or weeks rather than months. Private correspondence traveled more slowly through merchants and travelers. The Roman postal system was one of the most efficient until the modern era. Fact 40. The Roman day was divided into 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of darkness, but these hours varied in length depending on the season. Summer daylight hours were longer than winter hours. Romans told time using sundials and water clocks. The sundial was useless at night or on cloudy days, so water clocks measured time by the regulated flow of water from one container to another. Public water clocks in major cities allowed citizens to coordinate activities. The Roman concept of hours influenced how we measure time today, though our hours are of equal length year-round. Fact 41. Roman concrete structures have survived 2,000 years partly due to their recipes' unique properties. Recent analysis revealed that Roman concrete contains volcanic ash that reacts with seawater to create crystals that strengthen the material over time. Modern concrete, in contrast, typically begins degrading within 50 years, especially in seawater. Scientists are studying Roman concrete to develop more durable and environmentally friendly modern construction materials. The Romans didn't understand the chemistry behind their concrete's longevity, but through trial and error, they developed a superior building material that modern science is only now beginning to fully understand and appreciate. Fact 42. Emperor Caligula, who ruled from 37 to 41 CE, is remembered as one of Rome's most insane emperors, though some accounts may be exaggerated. Ancient sources claim he planned to make his favorite horse, Incitatus, a consul of Rome, though this was likely sarcastic commentary on the Senate's declining power rather than serious intention. Caligula allegedly declared himself a living god, had relationships with his sisters, and committed random acts of cruelty. He was assassinated by the Praetorian Guard after just 4 years in power. Modern historians debate whether Caligula was truly insane or whether hostile historians exaggerated his eccentricities and cruelties to delegitimize him. Fact 43. Roman theaters were massive stone structures that seated thousands of spectators who came to watch plays, poetry readings, and musical performances. Unlike Greek theaters built into hillsides, Roman theaters were freestanding structures with complex architecture. The Theatre of Pompey in Rome seated 11,000 people. Romans loved comedy and tragedy, adapting Greek plays and developing their own dramatic traditions. Famous playwrights like Plautus and Terence created works still studied today. Actors were generally slaves or freedmen and held low social status despite their popularity. Women could perform in mime shows but were excluded from serious theater. Elaborate stage machinery created special effects including flying actors and scene changes. Fact 44. The Roman amphitheater was a uniquely Roman architectural innovation, distinct from Greek theaters. Amphitheaters were oval-shaped and surrounded a central arena where gladiatorial games, animal hunts, and other spectacles took place. The Colosseum is the most famous, but hundreds of amphitheaters were built throughout the empire, many still standing today. These structures demonstrated Roman engineering prowess and the empire's wealth and power. Amphitheaters reinforced social hierarchy with seating arranged by class, senators in front rows, common citizens in middle sections, women and slaves in upper sections. Free admission to games kept the population entertained and politically compliant. Fact 45. Roman graffiti preserved at Pompeii and other sites reveal surprisingly modern sentiments. Messages include declarations of love, political slogans, insults, business advertisements, and bathroom humor. One reads, "Marcus loves Spendusa," scratched on a wall by a smitten young man. Another complains about a neighbor's noise. These mundane messages remind us that Romans were real people with the same emotions, frustrations, and humor we experience today. The graffiti provides invaluable insights into daily life, popular opinion, and social relationships in ways that official documents never could. Fact 46. Roman emperors adopted increasingly grandiose titles over time. Augustus kept relatively modest titles, but later emperors accumulated elaborate names and titles. The full title of Emperor Diocletian included Imperator Caesar Gaius Aurelius Valerius Diocletianus Augustus, along with numerous honorifics. Emperors were often deified after death, and some declared themselves gods while living. The imperial cult, worshipping the emperor as divine, helped unify the empire's diverse populations. Refusing to honor the emperor as divine was considered treason, which is partly why Christians were persecuted. They refused to worship any god except their own. Fact 47. The sack of Rome by Visigoths in 410 CE shocked the Roman world. Rome hadn't been captured by a foreign enemy in 800 years. While the Visigoths plundered the city for 3 days, the damage was limited compared to later sacks. However, the psychological impact was immense. The event demonstrated that Rome was no longer invincible. Saint Augustine wrote The City of God partly in response to claims that abandoning traditional Roman gods for Christianity had caused Rome's decline. The sack of Rome is often cited as a key moment in the fall of the Western Roman Empire, though the empire limped along for another 66 years. Fact 48. Roman citizenship was highly valued and provided significant legal rights and protections. Citizens could vote, hold office, make legal contracts, and were protected from certain punishments like crucifixion. The famous phrase civis Romanus sum, I am a Roman citizen, could protect a person from summary execution. Initially, citizenship was restricted to residents of Rome, but it gradually expanded to include all of Italy and eventually, in 212 CE under Emperor Caracalla, all free inhabitants of the empire. This expansion of citizenship helped unify the empire's diverse populations and spread Roman culture. The concept of citizenship with defined rights influenced modern democratic nations. Fact 49. Trajan's Column in Rome, completed in 113 CE, is a 125-foot-tall monument covered in a spiral relief sculpture that winds around the column like a strip of film. The relief depicts Trajan's military campaigns against the Dacians with incredible detail, showing over 2,600 figures including soldiers, horses, ships, and fortifications. The column originally was topped with a statue of Trajan, replaced in 1588 with a statue of St. Peter. Inside, a spiral staircase of 185 steps leads to a viewing platform at the top. The column served as a war memorial, a work of art, and propaganda showcasing Roman military might. It influenced architectural design for centuries and inspired similar monuments worldwide. Fact 50. Roman education was available mainly to wealthy boys, though some girls received private tutoring. Education began at home around age 7, learning reading, writing, and arithmetic. Wealthier students attended private schools, studying Latin, Greek, literature, philosophy, and rhetoric. Physical education included running, wrestling, and swimming. Higher education focused on rhetoric and public speaking, essential skills for political careers. Many wealthy Romans hired educated Greek slaves as tutors. Romans valued education highly, seeing it as essential for maintaining civilization and producing capable leaders. The structure of Roman education influenced Western educational systems for centuries. Fact 51. The Circus Maximus, Rome's great chariot racing stadium, was nearly 2,000 feet long and 400 feet wide, making it the largest entertainment venue ever built in the ancient world. It could accommodate over 150,000 spectators, roughly 1/6 of Rome's population. Chariot races featured teams of 2, 4, or even 6 horses thundering around the track 7 times, covering about 5 miles at dangerous speeds. The central barrier called the spina was decorated with obelisks, fountains, and statues. The turning posts at each end were particularly dangerous, where many crashes occurred. Today, the Circus Maximus is a public park, but its outline is still visible, and you can walk where thousands of horses once raced. Fact 52. Roman funeral practices varied by class and period. Wealthy Romans were cremated with elaborate ceremonies including processions, eulogies, and feasts. The deceased's ashes were placed in urns and stored in family tombs. Poor Romans were buried in simple graves. Romans believed in an afterlife where the soul continued some form of existence, so families maintained tombs and made regular offerings to deceased ancestors. The annual festival of Parentalia honored the dead with flowers, food, and prayers. Romans feared being forgotten after death more than death itself, which is why wealthy Romans built elaborate tombs with inscriptions preserving their names and achievements. Fact 53. The cult of Mithras was a mystery religion popular among Roman soldiers and spread throughout the empire. Mithras was a Persian god adopted by Romans. The religion involved secret initiation ceremonies, different levels of membership, and rituals performed in underground temples called Mithraea. Mithras was often depicted slaying a bull, and this image appeared in every Mithraeum. The religion was exclusively male and emphasized loyalty, courage, and spiritual purity. Mithraism competed with Christianity in the 3rd and 4th centuries and shared some similar elements including a birth on December 25, ritual meals, and salvation concepts. Christianity eventually triumphed, and Mithraism disappeared. Fact 54. Roman cosmetics and perfumes were luxury industries. Both men and women used makeup, though heavy makeup on men drew criticism. Women used white lead powder to lighten their skin, dangerous but highly fashionable. They used ash or antimony to darken eyebrows and eyelashes. Rouge made from red ochre or iron oxide colored cheeks and lips. Wealthy Romans bathed in perfumed oils and kept themselves scented. Perfume shops sold fragrances made from flowers, herbs, and spices imported from across the empire. Personal grooming and appearance were important status symbols showing wealth and sophistication. Fact 55. The Vandals, a Germanic tribe, sacked Rome in 455 CE in a raid far more destructive than the Visigoths' sack 45 years earlier. The Vandals methodically plundered the city for 2 weeks, stripping it of treasures including the golden menorah and other sacred objects looted from Jerusalem by Romans 4 centuries earlier. The destruction was so thorough that the word vandalism derives from their name. However, unlike the common portrayal, the Vandals didn't destroy buildings or artwork randomly. They were systematic looters, not mindless destroyers. Pope Leo I negotiated with the Vandal king Genseric, who agreed not to burn the city or massacre its inhabitants. Fact 56. Roman pharmacology included hundreds of remedies derived from plants, minerals, and animal products. Opium was used for pain relief. Willow bark, which contains the compound used to make aspirin, treated pain and fever. Honey treated wounds and infections. Romans used herbal preparations for everything from contraception to indigestion. While many remedies were effective, others were useless or harmful. Roman medical texts listed ingredients, preparation methods, and uses for hundreds of substances. This pharmaceutical knowledge was preserved through the Middle Ages and influenced modern medicine. Many modern drugs are still derived from plants the Romans used. Fact 57. The Roman army's standard was the aquila, a silver or gold eagle on a pole carried by a soldier called the aquilifer. Losing a legion's eagle to the enemy was the ultimate disgrace, and soldiers would die defending it. The eagle represented the legion's honor and identity. Captured eagles were sometimes recovered through military campaigns years later, and their return was celebrated throughout the empire. When Varus lost 3 legions and their eagles in the Teutoburg forest in 9 CE, it traumatized Rome. 2 eagles were recovered decades later, but the third was never found, remaining a source of shame for Rome. Fact 58. Roman surveying and engineering enabled the construction of cities with organized street grids, proper drainage, and public facilities. Roman surveyors used the groma, an instrument with plumb lines hanging from a cross, to establish right angles and straight lines. This allowed the creation of cities with perpendicular streets forming rectangular blocks, a pattern still visible in cities founded by Romans throughout Europe. This organized approach to city planning contrasted with the organic, maze-like streets of many pre-Roman settlements. Roman city planning influenced urban design for centuries and remains evident in modern cities built on Roman foundations. Fact 59. Centurions were the backbone of the Roman army, professional officers who commanded centuries of about 80 soldiers. They were distinguished by their transverse crests on their helmets, worn perpendicular to regular soldiers' front-to-back crests. Centurions led from the front in battle, and casualty rates among them were high. They received significantly better pay than regular soldiers and wielded significant authority. The rank of centurion was achieved through merit and experience rather than birth or political connections. Some centurions rose through the ranks to become senior military commanders. Their professional leadership was crucial to Roman military success. Fact 60. The Pax Romana, or Roman peace, lasted approximately 200 years from 27 BCE to 180 CE. During this period, the Mediterranean world experienced unprecedented peace, stability, and prosperity. Trade flourished, cities grew, arts and literature thrived, and the population increased. The Roman army maintained security, roads facilitated commerce, and Roman law provided stability. This doesn't mean the empire was entirely peaceful. Rome still fought wars on its frontiers, but the interior provinces enjoyed stability rarely achieved before or since. The Pax Romana was one of history's most peaceful and prosperous eras, allowing the development of culture, philosophy, science, and trade. Fact 61. Roman concrete underwater structures have lasted 2,000 years while modern concrete structures in seawater deteriorate in decades. Scientists discovered that Roman concrete made with volcanic ash from Pozzuoli near Naples reacts with seawater to form rare minerals including tobermorite, which fills cracks and makes the concrete stronger over time. Modern concrete, made with Portland cement, lacks this self-healing property. The Romans likely discovered this recipe through experimentation, using locally available materials without understanding the chemistry. Today, researchers are working to recreate Roman concrete as a more sustainable alternative to modern Portland cement, which produces significant carbon emissions during manufacturing. Fact 62. The Arch of Constantine in Rome, completed in 315 CE, celebrates Constantine's victory over his rival Maxentius. The arch is notable for incorporating sculptures and reliefs from earlier monuments, a practice called spolia, reusing elements from older buildings. This practice became common in late Roman architecture, partly due to economic decline and partly as a way to link new rulers with past glory. The arch stands near the Colosseum and is one of the best-preserved triumphal arches in Rome. Triumphal arches were uniquely Roman monuments, celebrating military victories and demonstrating Roman power and achievement. They influenced architectural design worldwide. Fact 63. Roman banquets called convivia were elaborate social events that could last for hours. Guests reclined on couches arranged around 3 sides of a table, leaving the 4th side open for servants to serve food and clear dishes. Romans ate with their hands, and slaves brought water and towels between courses for washing. Entertainment included musicians, dancers, poetry readings, and conversation. The number of guests was typically limited to between 3 and 9, following the saying that dinner guests should be not fewer than the Graces, nor more than the Muses. Seating position indicated social rank, with the most honored guest in the most prestigious position. Fact 64. The Roman goddess Venus was originally an obscure deity of gardens and vegetation, but she became one of Rome's most important goddesses after being identified with the Greek Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty. Julius Caesar claimed descent from Venus through her son Aeneas, the legendary founder of the Roman people. This divine ancestry enhanced Caesar's prestige and political power. Emperor Augustus built the Temple of Venus Genetrix, celebrating her as the ancestress of the Julian family. Venus appears throughout Roman art, literature, and coins, symbolizing love, beauty, prosperity, and victory. Her planet, Venus, the morning and evening star, was considered her celestial manifestation. Fact 65. Roman military camps called castra were temporary fortifications built each night when legions were on campaign. Even for a single night's stop, soldiers constructed a standardized rectangular camp surrounded by a defensive ditch and rampart topped with wooden stakes. Inside, tents were arranged in an organized grid pattern. This practice, maintained regardless of circumstances, ensured security and discipline. Permanent military camps built on the same plan eventually became towns and cities. Many modern European cities including Chester, Doncaster, Manchester, and Lancaster in England developed from Roman castra, with Castor, Cester, or Chester in their names derived from castra. Fact 66. The Roman triumph was the highest honor a military commander could receive, a spectacular procession through Rome celebrating a major military victory. The triumphant general, dressed as Jupiter in a purple toga embroidered with gold, rode in a four-horse chariot. The procession included soldiers, captives, treasure captured in war, and animals from conquered territories. A slave stood behind the general holding a crown over his head while whispering, "Memento mori, remember you are mortal," to prevent excessive pride. The parade ended at the Temple of Jupiter where the general made sacrifices. Triumphs were rare and required specific conditions including at least 5,000 enemy killed and substantial territory gained. Fact 67. Roman libraries were numerous and well-stocked. The first public library in Rome was established by Asinius Pollio in 39 BCE. By the 4th century CE, Rome had 28 public libraries. Libraries typically had separate sections for Greek and Latin texts. Texts were written on papyrus scrolls stored in cylindrical containers arranged on shelves or in niches. Libraries served as intellectual centers where scholars studied, writers worked, and citizens educated themselves. The destruction of the Library of Alexandria, with its hundreds of thousands of scrolls, represents one of history's greatest cultural losses. Much ancient knowledge survives only in fragments or references in other texts. Fact 68. Roman currency featured the emperor's portrait and conveyed political messages throughout the empire. Coins were a primary way most people saw the emperor's image and learned about important events like military victories, building projects, or anniversaries. The denarius, Rome's silver coin, remained stable for centuries and was used throughout the empire, facilitating trade. Roman coins are common archaeological finds, helping date sites and providing insights into economic conditions. Over time, coins were debased with less silver content as economic pressures mounted. By the 3rd century CE, galloping inflation devastated the economy as coin values plummeted. Fact 69. The catacombs of Rome are underground burial chambers carved into soft volcanic rock beneath the city. Early Christians used catacombs for burials and occasionally for secret religious services during persecutions. The catacombs contain miles of tunnels with burial niches carved into walls, decorated with early Christian art including symbols like fish, anchors, and the Good Shepherd. Contrary to popular myth, Christians didn't live in catacombs. They were exclusively for the dead. The catacombs provide invaluable evidence of early Christian beliefs and practices. Similar catacombs exist in other Mediterranean cities, but Rome's are the most extensive and well-preserved. Fact 70. Roman shipbuilding technology enabled trade and military dominance across the Mediterranean. Merchant ships reached lengths of 100 feet and could carry hundreds of tons of cargo including grain, wine, olive oil, and manufactured goods. Naval warships featured bronze rams at the waterline for attacking enemy ships and towers for archers. During the Punic Wars against Carthage, Romans built hundreds of warships despite limited naval experience, demonstrating remarkable industrial capacity. The largest Roman ships, built under Emperor Caligula, were floating palaces measuring 230 feet long. One was recovered from Lake Nemi in the 1930s but was destroyed during World War II. Fact 71. The Roman fire brigade called the Vigiles consisted of about 7,000 men organized into 7 cohorts, each responsible for 2 of Rome's 14 districts. The Vigiles patrolled at night watching for fires, fighting them with bucket brigades, pumps, and demolishing buildings to create firebreaks. They also enforced laws, arrested criminals, and maintained public order. Fire was a constant threat in Rome where most buildings were wood and closely packed. The Great Fire of 64 CE burned for 9 days, destroying 3 of Rome's 14 districts and damaging 7 others. The Vigiles were relatively effective, but major fires occurred periodically throughout Roman history. Fact 72. Roman gardens in wealthy homes were peaceful retreats featuring columns, statues, fountains, flowers, and herbs. The peristyle, a courtyard surrounded by a colonnade, was the center of domestic gardens. Romans valued natural beauty and incorporated gardens into urban homes despite limited space. They grew roses, lilies, violets, and other ornamental plants alongside practical herbs and vegetables. Garden paintings from Pompeii show that Romans appreciated naturalistic garden designs with birds, plants, and water features. The Roman love of gardens influenced Western garden design, particularly during the Renaissance when classical styles were revived. Fact 73. Roman musical instruments included wind instruments like the tibia, a double-reed instrument similar to an oboe, and the hydraulis, a water organ that used water pressure to regulate air flow through pipes. Percussion instruments included cymbals, tambourines, and drums. String instruments included the lyre and the cithara. Music accompanied religious ceremonies, theatrical performances, military marches, and private entertainment. Professional musicians were usually slaves or freedmen. While we know what Roman instruments looked like from art and archaeological finds, we don't know exactly how Roman music sounded, as they didn't develop written musical notation that has survived. Fact 74. Roman mosaics, created from tiny colored tiles called tesserae, decorated floors and walls in wealthy homes and public buildings. Mosaics depicted mythological scenes, geometric patterns, daily life, and occasionally humorous subjects. The cave Canum mosaic from Pompeii shows a dog with the warning, "Beware of the dog." Creating detailed mosaics required tremendous skill and patience, with thousands of tiny pieces fitted together to create images that have lasted 2 millennia. Roman mosaic artists were highly valued craftsmen. The best mosaics are artistic masterpieces rivaling any paintings. Many Roman mosaics are displayed in museums worldwide, though the best remain in situ at Roman sites. Fact 75. The province of Judea was a constant source of trouble for Rome. The Jewish population resisted Roman rule and foreign religious practices. The Jewish-Roman Wars began in 66 CE when Jewish rebels drove the Roman garrison out of Jerusalem. Rome responded with overwhelming force. After a brutal 4-year war, Jerusalem fell in 70 CE. The Romans destroyed the Second Temple, leaving only the Western Wall standing. The war's aftermath is depicted on the Arch of Titus in Rome, showing Roman soldiers carrying the temple menorah. A final Jewish revolt in 132 to 136 CE was crushed, and Jews were banned from Jerusalem. These conflicts demonstrated Rome's determination to maintain control despite enormous costs. Fact 76. Emperor Diocletian, ruling from 284 to 305 CE, implemented sweeping reforms that temporarily stabilized the empire. He divided the empire into eastern and western halves, each ruled by a senior emperor called Augustus assisted by a junior emperor called Caesar. This tetrarchy, or rule of four, was designed to provide clear succession and effective governance. Diocletian also reorganized the military, reformed taxation, and attempted to control inflation with price edicts. While many reforms didn't outlast him, Diocletian's division of the empire into eastern and western halves became permanent. He voluntarily retired, the only Roman emperor to do so, and lived quietly for 8 years before dying of natural causes. Fact 77. The Byzantine Empire, the continuation of the Eastern Roman Empire, survived for 1,000 years after the Western Empire fell. While people at the time still called themselves Romans, modern historians use Byzantine to distinguish the medieval Greek-speaking Christian Empire from the classical Latin-speaking pagan empire. Constantinople, founded by Constantine in 330 CE, became the Byzantine capital. The Byzantines preserved Roman law, Greek philosophy, and Christian theology through the Middle Ages. They also maintained Roman traditions of bureaucracy, diplomacy, and military organization. The Byzantine Empire finally fell in 1453 when Ottoman Turks conquered Constantinople, marking the definitive end of Roman civilization 2,200 years after Rome's legendary founding. Fact 78. Roman concrete construction enabled the creation of unprecedented architectural spaces. The Romans discovered that adding volcanic ash to lime mortar created a material that could span large distances and support enormous weight. This allowed the construction of massive buildings like the Pantheon with its 142-foot diameter dome, the Baths of Caracalla covering 27 acres, and the Basilica of Maxentius with 80-foot high vaulted ceilings. These structures showcased Roman power and engineering skill. The techniques were lost after Rome fell and weren't matched until the 19th century when steel and reinforced concrete enabled similar spans. Roman concrete buildings continue to inspire architects and engineers worldwide. Fact 79. The fall of the Western Roman Empire was not a single dramatic event but a gradual process spanning decades. Multiple factors contributed: economic decline, currency debasement, military defeats, barbarian invasions, political instability, plague, climate change, and religious conflicts. The traditional date of 476 CE marks when Odoacer deposed the last Western Roman emperor, but this was merely a formality. Effective Roman power in the West had eroded decades earlier. Germanic tribes had already established kingdoms within the former empire. The Eastern Empire continued, but the classical Roman world was transformed. The fall of Rome ended ancient history and began the Middle Ages, fundamentally reshaping European civilization. Fact 80. Roman engineering expertise extended beyond buildings to water management. Roman aqueducts supplied cities with fresh water from sources dozens of miles away. The Pont du Gard in France, a three-tiered aqueduct bridge, carried water across a river valley and still stands nearly 2,000 years later. Roman engineers calculated precisely the gentle slope needed to keep water flowing without being too fast or too slow. They built inspection chambers and settling tanks to remove sediment. The engineering principles used in Roman aqueducts remained standard until modern times. Many Roman aqueducts are still studied by engineering students today. Fact 81. Roman religion was practical and contractual rather than based on faith in the modern sense. Romans made sacrifices and offerings to gods expecting specific benefits in return. Religion and state were inseparable, with emperors serving as Pontifex Maximus, chief priest. Romans adopted and adapted gods from conquered peoples, identifying foreign gods with Roman equivalents. This religious flexibility helped Rome incorporate diverse populations. The exception was Christianity, which claimed exclusive truth and rejected Roman gods, creating conflict. Christianity's ultimate triumph transformed Rome from a polytheistic to a monotheistic culture, fundamentally changing Western civilization. Fact 82. The legacy of Rome surrounds us today. Romance languages descend from Latin. Legal systems in most of Europe and Latin America derive from Roman law. The alphabet you're reading evolved from Latin script. Political concepts including republic, senate, and citizenship come from Rome. Architectural elements like arches, domes, columns, and vaulted ceilings are Roman innovations. Roman numerals still mark clock faces and super bowls. Western literature, philosophy, and education trace roots to Roman culture. The month of August honors Emperor Augustus. Even our calendar with 365 days and leap years comes from Julius Caesar's calendar reform. Rome fell, but its influence endures. Fact 83. The Colosseum has survived earthquakes, fires, stone robbers who harvested its building materials for other projects, and 2,000 years of weathering. Today, it stands as Rome's most iconic landmark, visited by millions annually. While partially ruined, enough remains to convey its original grandeur and to awe visitors with Roman engineering achievement. The Colosseum is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the new 7 wonders of the world. It symbolizes not just ancient Rome but human civilization's capacity to create monuments that transcend their original purpose and speak to people across millennia. Standing inside the Colosseum, you can almost hear the roar of ancient crowds echoing through the ages. Fact 84. Roman literature produced works still read and enjoyed today. Virgil's Aeneid tells the legendary story of Rome's founding. Ovid's Metamorphoses inspired countless later writers and artists. Cicero's philosophical works and speeches set standards for rhetoric and political thought. Seneca's Stoic philosophy influenced thinkers for 2 millennia. Julius Caesar's commentaries on the Gallic Wars provides a first-hand account of his military campaigns. Roman historians Livy, Tacitus, and Suetonius chronicled Rome's history, providing invaluable sources despite biases and inaccuracies. Roman poetry, from Catullus's personal love poems to Horace's odes, expresses emotions as relevant today as 2,000 years ago. Fact 85. Roman baths were social centers that served all classes, though not simultaneously. A typical day at the baths included exercise in the palestra, sweating in the caldarium, relaxing in the tepidarium, and plunging into the frigidarium. Bathers were scraped with a strigil to remove dirt, oils, and dead skin, then massaged with perfumed oils. The baths also featured libraries, gardens, shops, and restaurants. Romans bathed almost daily, making them notably clean for the ancient world. The largest baths accommodated thousands simultaneously. Admission was cheap or free, subsidized by wealthy patrons or the government, making baths accessible to almost everyone. Bath complexes demonstrated Roman engineering with sophisticated heating systems and water supplies. Fact 86. Roman portraiture was remarkably realistic, showing subjects with wrinkles, imperfections, and individual features rather than idealized forms. This veristic style reflected Roman values of experience, wisdom, and character earned through life. Older men's portraits emphasized their age and gravitas. The tradition likely descended from ancestor masks kept by patrician families and worn during funeral processions. Portrait busts allowed Romans to preserve family members' likenesses and display them in homes. The realistic style contrasts with Greek idealization and shows Rome's practical, empirical approach. These portraits give us direct visual connections to real Romans, making them feel more immediate and human than idealized sculptures from other cultures. Fact 87. The Stoic philosophy that originated in Greece became highly influential in Rome, particularly among educated elites. Stoicism taught that virtue is the only good, that we should accept what we cannot control, and that reason should govern emotions. Famous Roman Stoics included Seneca, Epictetus, and Emperor Marcus Aurelius, whose Meditations remains a classic of philosophical literature. Stoic principles of duty, endurance, self-discipline, and justice aligned well with Roman values. Stoicism provided a framework for making sense of life's difficulties and maintaining dignity despite circumstances. Modern cognitive behavioral therapy draws on Stoic principles, showing philosophy's practical value across centuries. Fact 88. Roman military discipline was absolute and sometimes brutal. Punishments for cowardice or desertion included fustuarium, being beaten to death by fellow soldiers, or being sold into slavery. Entire units could be punished through decimation, where every 10th man was executed by his comrades. Minor offenses brought floggings, reduced rations, or assignment to dangerous duties. However, discipline was balanced with rewards. Soldiers received bonuses, decorations, and promotions for bravery and service. Veterans received land grants and citizenship. This combination of harsh discipline and substantial rewards created history's most effective fighting force, enabling Rome to conquer and control a vast empire for centuries. Fact 89. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled from 161 to 180 CE, is considered one of Rome's 5 good emperors and is unique as a philosopher-emperor. His Meditations, written in Greek during military campaigns, explores Stoic philosophy and how to live virtuously despite life's challenges. The book was never intended for publication but remained personal reflections. Discovered and published centuries later, Meditations has influenced thinkers, leaders, and ordinary people for centuries. Marcus Aurelius spent much of his reign fighting wars on Rome's frontiers, battling Germanic tribes and facing a devastating plague. Despite his philosophical temperament preferring contemplation, he dutifully fulfilled his imperial responsibilities until his death. Fact 90. The Roman familia included more than our modern nuclear family. It encompassed everyone living under the authority of the paterfamilias, the male head of household, including his wife, children, grandchildren, slaves, and freedmen. The paterfamilias wielded enormous legal power called patria potestas, including theoretically the power of life and death over family members, though this extreme power was rarely exercised by the imperial period. The familia was the basic unit of Roman society, and family loyalty was paramount. Ancestor worship and maintaining family honor were essential duties. This extended family structure provided social security, economic cooperation, and political alliances. Fact 99. The legacy of ancient Rome extends far beyond buildings, laws, and languages to fundamental concepts of civilization itself. Rome demonstrated that diverse peoples speaking different languages and following different customs could unite under common laws and shared civic identity. The Roman concept of citizenship with rights and responsibilities influenced modern democratic nations. Roman ideals of public service, civic duty, and the rule of law over the rule of individuals still resonate today. Rome showed that civilizations could grow, adapt, and endure through centuries of change. Even in collapse, Rome demonstrated that great civilizations leave legacies that outlast their political power. The story of Rome reminds us that we are part of a continuous human story, that our institutions and ideas have deep roots, and that what we build today may echo through centuries yet to come. As you drift toward sleep, imagine walking through the Roman Forum at sunset, the ancient stones glowing golden in the fading light. Picture the Colosseum standing eternal against the Roman sky, its arches framing clouds and stars. Hear the distant echo of Latin voices, the footsteps of legions marching to distant frontiers, the debates of senators shaping history. Feel the weight of centuries, the accumulated wisdom and folly of 1,000 years of human striving, ambition, glory, and failure. Rome rose from a small village to rule the known world, then fell and rose again in memory, literature, and influence. The Romans believed that to speak the name of the dead is to make them live again. Tonight, you have spoken Rome's name, and in your dreams, the eternal city lives once more. Rest now, traveler through time. Your journey through ancient Rome is complete. May your dreams be filled with marble temples and mighty legions, with the grandeur of empire and the wisdom of Stoic philosophers, with the eternal glory that was Rome. Sleep peacefully, knowing that you've walked through one of humanity's greatest civilizations, and its spirit, laws, and language continue to shape our world. The glory of Rome endures, immortal in human memory and achievement.